The year was 1776. 13 colonies had been established in the New World with the intention of expanding the British Empire. But tensions between the two continents had continued to rise, and the people living in the New World were longing for a better life. Independence, freedom to live life on their terms, pursuing their own vision of liberty, happiness. On July 2nd of that year, 56 men met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to discuss matters. By the end of that day, they resolved to separate from the British Empire and establish their own nation. 2 days later, the wording was finalized, and on July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence from Britain was signed. The American Revolution was underway, and a future world power was born. On the same day, 571 miles to the south, in Burke County, North Carolina, a baby boy was born. Estimates suggest Joseph J. James would be one of only 100 babies born in colonial America on the exact day as the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Joseph would have a son, Joseph Jr., and a granddaughter, Phoebe, who would later marry James Fleming Scott. They would have a son, Foster Fleming Scott, who had a son, George William Scott. On July 4th, 1908, on what would have been the 132nd birthday of his great-great-grandfather Joseph J. James, George Scott would attend a July 4th celebration where he would meet a young woman, Oma Lucinda Tanny Rattery. The two would fall in love and were married on September 21st, 1910. George and Oma Scott had 8 children, who had children, who had children, who had children, some of which have had children. 107 years after their marriage, in the year 2017, the descendants of George and Oma Scott is 375 and growing. You are one of them. George William Scott was born December 18, 1890, in a log house his father built near Huggins, Missouri. Oma was born a year later on November 25, 1891. America, at that time, was a much different world by today's standards. The Civil War had concluded just 25 years prior. It was the age of industry in American history. John Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and John Pierpont Morgan were helping to reshape the landscape of America through the development of industry, manufacturing, and big cities. These names are mostly known today for the buildings that they have named after them. But for the family of George and Oma Scott, they were as everyday names as Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates are today. George and Oma did not have the kind of schools and churches that we have today. There were no iPads, no internet, no electricity, not even a toilet. George attended a school only 10 months in his whole life. Oma attended a small single-room schoolhouse where she learned with the other children by studying whatever materials and information was available. It would be another 12 years before John Rockefeller would help start the General Education Board that would shape the school systems we know today. George was 19 and Oma 18 when they married. After the wedding, George and Oma settled in Graff, Missouri, living a simple farm life. Their family grew over the next 19 years to include 2 sons and 6 daughters. After 7 years of marriage, George felt led to become a minister, and he preached his first sermon in June 1917 at the Union Chapel Free Will Baptist Church. In those days, churches could not afford to pay their pastors, so George rode his horse from community to community, holding services every Saturday and Sunday before moving to the next community. George's horseback-based ministry would last for 9 years before he was able to get his first automobile in 1926. Following a heart attack in 1955, George would live just 13 months and died on March 7, 1957. In his 66 years, George witnessed the age of industry, the birth of the education system, the automobile, 2 world wars, 2 economic depressions, 12 U.S. presidents, 6 territories reached statehood, the airplane, the first jet engine, The evolution of an army based on horseback to an age of nuclear proliferation, the interstate system, progressive politics, the recording of music, television, radio, and many more of the common technologies we take for granted today. Oma would live a while longer without George in their little cottage in Mountain Grove, Missouri. She died December 6, 1982. Not long before his death, George wrote in his journal, "As I look back over my life, I cannot be too thankful for my helpmeet and the children. They mean everything to me. Mom and me don't have much of this world's goods, but we feel rich in the Lord. My whole heart's desire is that we may live and number as many in heaven as we do here on earth." 107 years, 8 children, 27 grandchildren, a lot of great-grandchildren, many great-great-grandchildren, and many more great-great-great-grandchildren later, the descendants of George and Oma Scott continue to touch the world. You are one of them.